Take the keys, my mother whispered. If the police ask, you were driving. My sister was shaking beside her, her windshield cracked, a stranger bleeding on the asphalt outside the courthouse. I stared at the men, then at my mother, and realized the most dangerous thing in that parking lot was not the accident. It was the lie my family expected me to tell. For 20 years, my parents had believed I was an ordinary county employee who worked long hours, wore cheap suits, and never talked about money. They had never seen me on television, never read the legal decisions carrying my name, never known that the daughter they thought had taken a modest government job had become a federal judge. I had kept the truth from them because, years earlier, my father had told me that judges were people who lived above ordinary families. I wanted to remain their daughter, not become a title. That morning, however, my hidden life collided with my family's desperation. Before we begin, if you enjoy emotional and inspiring stories like this, make sure to support the channel by liking this video, subscribing, and sharing your thoughts in the comments. Your support helps us bring more powerful stories of kindness, hope, and humanity. The trouble began with a phone call at 7:14 on a rainy Tuesday. My sister Claire rarely called before breakfast. When I answered, I heard her breathing hard. She said she had been in a crash and needed me to come home immediately. I asked if she was hurt. She said no, but her voice broke before she added, "Mom says you'll know what to do." That sentence followed me all the way to my parents' neighborhood. Claire was standing beside her sedan when I arrived. Her hands were trembling, and a dark scratch ran across her cheek. Our mother, Helen, paced behind her, clutching a handbag against her chest. Across the street, a man in a gray coat sat against a brick wall while a paramedic examined his leg. A police cruiser blocked half the road. What happened? I asked. Claire looked at Mom first. He stepped into the street. The officer approached and asked Claire to remain near the vehicle. He said witnesses were being interviewed because the pedestrian had suffered a serious fracture. Then my mother grabbed my arm and pulled me toward the porch. "Just say you were driving," she whispered. I thought I had misheard her. "What? You have a clean record. You're responsible. Claire cannot lose her job. She has the children." I looked at my sister. She would not meet my eyes. Was he in the crosswalk? Silence. "Claire." She finally whispered. I was looking at my phone. Everything inside me went cold. I had spent my adult life believing the law existed precisely for moments like this, when fear made people choose the easiest version of the truth. Yet my mother was staring at me as though honesty were a luxury only strangers could afford. "I'm not taking responsibility for something I didn't do," I said. Mom's face tightened. "You always thought you were better than us." The words hurt more than I expected. "No," I answered quietly. "I thought you deserved the truth." I walked back toward the street. The injured man was conscious. His name was Daniel Reed. He was a school custodian, 63 years old, and his hands shook as he tried to sit up. When he saw me, he said, "Please tell them I didn't just jump out." "You don't have to convince me," I said. His eyes moved toward Claire's car. She was looking down. The officer heard him and wrote something in his notebook. Then Claire started crying. Not the dramatic crying my mother feared, but the exhausted kind that seemed to come from somewhere years deeper than the accident. She admitted she had been reading a message from her ex-husband. She had seen Daniel too late. She had braked, but not enough. "I thought if I told the truth, everything would disappear," she said. I crouched beside her. "Everything won't disappear. But lying can make it worse." She looked at me through wet eyelashes. "You really don't understand. You have no idea what it's like to have everyone depending on you." For the first time, I almost told her. I almost said, "I know exactly what pressure feels like. I know what it means to walk into a room where one decision can change someone's life. I know what it means to be afraid of making the wrong choice." But I still did not tell her. That afternoon, the police took Claire's statement. Daniel was taken to the hospital. My mother barely spoke to me. She sat in the kitchen, staring at the rain running down the window. Finally, she said, "Your father would have helped us. My father would have told Claire to tell the truth." Mom looked up sharply. "You don't know your father as well as you think. I froze. She opened a drawer and removed an old envelope. Inside was a photograph of my father standing beside a courthouse door, younger and thinner than I remembered. On the back, in his handwriting, were 6 words, "I failed someone when it mattered." "What is this?" I asked. Mom's eyes filled. "Your father was a witness once. Years ago. A young man caused an accident. Your father knew what happened, but he lied because the young man's family threatened ours. That lie followed him until he died." I sat down. "Why didn't you ever tell me?" "Because he made me promise." The room seemed suddenly smaller. That night, I drove to the hospital. Daniel was awake. His daughter, Rachel, sat beside him. She looked exhausted. "I'm sorry," I said. Daniel studied me. "You're the woman from the street." "Yes." "Are you family?" I hesitated. "Yes." He nodded slowly. "Then you're probably going to have a hard time." I almost smiled. "You have no idea." He asked me why I had come. "To tell you that whatever happens, I won't let them make you disappear inside somebody else's story." Daniel squeezed my hand. The next morning, Claire called me. She said she wanted to confess fully. Before she could finish, my mother entered my apartment unexpectedly. "You cannot do this," she said. Claire was on speaker. Mom stared at the phone. "Your sister has a family. And Daniel has a life," I replied. Mom's voice cracked. "I already lost one person to a lie. I cannot lose another." That was when I finally understood. She was not protecting Claire. She was protecting herself from reliving my father's failure. I looked at her and said, "Then let's stop the lie here." There was a long silence. Claire began to cry on the phone. "Mom, I'm sorry." My mother closed her eyes. "Tell them the truth," she whispered. Claire did. The investigation continued, and because she cooperated, the case became far less severe than my mother had feared. She accepted responsibility, paid restitution, and attended Daniel's physical therapy appointments. Daniel eventually walked again, slowly at first, then confidently. Claire never touched her phone while driving after that day. The following weeks were not easy. Truth did not magically repair every wound. Claire lost several friends who believed the accident proved she was careless, and she spent nights sitting at my kitchen table, wondering whether one terrible second had permanently changed the person she was. I reminded her that accountability was not the same as being condemned. She began volunteering at a rehabilitation center, not because it erased what happened, but because she wanted to understand the consequences beyond her own fear. My mother changed too. She stopped asking whether I could fix problems and started asking whether she could help. One Saturday, she arrived with a box of my childhood things. At the bottom was a school essay I had written when I was 11. The title was, "What I Want to Be." I had written that I wanted to become someone people could trust when they were frightened. Mom read it twice. "You were always becoming this person," she said. I smiled. "I just took the long way." She shook her head. "No. We all did." Daniel recovered slowly. Months later, he sent me a photograph of himself standing without his cane. Behind him was the school where he worked. On the back he had written, "Still here." I kept that photograph beside my father's note. Sometimes I wondered what would have happened if I had accepted those keys. Maybe Claire would have walked away that day believing a lie could protect her. Maybe Daniel would have carried not only a broken leg, but the knowledge that nobody believed him. Maybe my mother would have repeated my father's mistake without ever realizing it. Instead, one painful truth became the beginning of something better. Not perfect. Not painless. Just honest. And sometimes, that is enough to give a broken family a second chance. A second chance worth fighting for, together. Weeks later, my mother came to my apartment carrying another envelope. "I think it belongs to you now." Inside was my father's old courthouse photograph. Under it was a note he had written shortly before he died, "The hardest truth is the one that costs you something." Mom sat beside me. "I was angry because I thought you were judging us," she said. "I wasn't. You were hiding something too." I looked at her. Yes. I reached into my desk and removed the folder I had carried for years. On the cover was my name, followed by my title. United States District Judge. Mom stared at it. For several seconds, she said nothing. Then she laughed through her tears. You became a judge. I nodded. And you let me tell you to lie. I was afraid you would see me differently. She touched my cheek. I do. My heart sank. Then she smiled. I see you more clearly. A month later, Daniel came to my courtroom for a public ceremony honoring community members who had shown courage after an accident. He did not know I would be there until he entered. When he saw me in the black robe, he stopped. You. I smiled. Me. He laughed softly. Well, that explains why you looked so calm. I wasn't calm. He shook his head. You just looked like somebody who knew the truth mattered. After the ceremony, Claire hugged me in the courthouse hallway. Mom stood beside her, holding my father's photograph. We should have known, Claire said. You weren't supposed to. Why? Because I wanted you to love me before you knew what I had become. Mom squeezed my hand. We loved you before the title, she said. And now we know the title never changed you. I looked at the photograph of my father. For years, I had believed keeping secrets protected the people I loved. That day taught me something different. Sometimes a secret feels like shelter until the moment the storm arrives, and then you discover you have locked everyone inside with you. If this story touched your heart, share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever faced a moment when telling the truth was harder than staying silent? Your experience might help someone else choose courage. And if this story moved you, please like the video and subscribe to the channel for more stories about kindness, hope, courage, compassion, and humanity. As we left the courthouse, my mother slipped her arm through mine. She looked at the grand doors, then at me. You know, she said, smiling, your father would have been proud. I looked up at the evening sky. I hope so. And for the first time, I understood that becoming a judge had never been the greatest thing I had done. The greatest thing was choosing, when my own family begged me to lie, to tell the truth without stopping loving them.